Okay, I first met Emma when I was a student at Portsmouth doing my MA just 3 years ago. And she asked me to come and speak sort of informally to people today about my personal experience and basically point out the things that I found particularly useful and things that I would recommend everybody to do if they're looking for a career in translating. I don't particularly do much interpreting. I started off my life well for a translator. I lived in Brussels from the age of 7 to 12, just when the EU was setting up there, and there were a lot of foreign companies there. So there were a lot of different languages, different cultures there. I went to the British school because my schooling was in English, but my cousins went to the European school and were schooled in French because they didn't have an English section at the time. But the whole atmosphere was one of a lot of languages. So it sparked a great deal of interest, and you have to obviously love languages to do this as a career. Then I got my place at university after a normal school career to do French, and I took a year out. And in my year out, I sort of came to the conclusion that the only career open to me would be teaching French, and having seen what my French teachers went through, I didn't want to do that. So off I went, and travelling around. So when I came back, I went to Leicester, which was the university I was at, and said, I'm not quite sure I want to do French. And they said, what do you want to do? You can do any of the arts. It was all very much more flexible in those days. So I did archaeology, art history, and ancient history, and then moved just to archaeology and ended up with a 2-1. After that, British archaeology is wet and cold, so I did a PGCE and went into primary teaching. After 2 or 3 years teaching in Canning Town and East Ham, I moved down to Blandford Forum mainly because my partner became editor of The Ecologist magazine. So I was teaching in Blandford, in Dorset, which is a lovely, quiet, retiring place, and I felt life was passing me by. So when my partner got offered a job in Uruguay in a company that was basically providing information for NGOs, taking it from all different languages, getting it into English, I went along for the ride and was offered a job on the World Guide, because they had non-native speakers translating into English, and I was basically correcting their English. And as I was a teacher, they thought I was perfectly well qualified to do this, and so did I at the time. And I very much enjoyed it, and I learnt an awful lot about publishing, about how not to correct people's work, and also how to do it properly. It also gave me a subject, a specialism. I'll talk more about that later, because it isn't a particularly profitable specialism, and that was one of the problems I came across later. I ended up, because I was there and I was an English speaker, I was asked to do lots of work by lots of people because there were very few native speakers there. Lots of other NGO offices are based in Montevideo, Uruguay, because of instability issues in other countries. And so lots of other people asked me for translations, and as they were mostly on environment, ecology, sustainability, I felt perfectly happy to do it. I did get opportunities to go to conferences, and I had a go at liaison interpreting, but I found it very, very stressful, and I couldn't quite do that. I prefer to be sat in a quiet environment with all my resources around me. I also spent one summer working on an eco-community, I was actually a play leader for children as a teacher, but I did translations for them as well. And all these things sort of contributed to making life very interesting and giving me something I could then use professionally. While I was there in the eco-community, I was contacted by a press agency that had just set up an office in Montevideo, and they offered me a full-time job translating, but I really didn't feel that I could do that. So I came back to England, and they kept contacting me, and in the end, I went back and did the job. And it was wonderful, actually. I would recommend, if you can get a period as an in-house translator, you learn so much from it that it is a really good thing to do. The job I was doing, though, wasn't quite translating, it was trans-editing. You had all these correspondents in different countries writing articles. They came to you, you read them, you rewrote them in English, which was great. I had English language editors, very experienced people above me, who took my work and then corrected it, reviewed it, restructured it at times. And over a period of years, I was trained up there. The output was massive. You were expected to do 4,000 words a day, and it went straight out onto the wire, so it had to be right. So it was a very stressful environment. Then, obviously, I met my husband of the time. I had my daughter, and I went part-time, and I had lots of freelance work to balance the books, which was lovely. Unfortunately, the world wasn't going to run to my demands, and the economic crash in Argentina meant freelance work dried up. I was on half-time pay with a full-time child, and so I ran back to England, thinking, having had the experience of being a rather big fish in a small pond, that work would always find its way to me. When I got back to England, it wasn't quite the case. It was extremely expensive to live here. Where I'd been earning $1,000 and living perfectly happily on it in Uruguay, here that was nothing. Childcare, that was more than I was earning before. Agencies wanted my experience and they wanted qualifications because my language pair was fairly common and there were a lot of better qualified people. They all said, oh, lovely experience, but I didn't get a great deal of work. There's also an issue with Spanish that in Spain, translating into English, a lot of people are quite happy to get a school child to translate their things for them. They're trying to professionalise the career there, but it's hard work, it's an uphill struggle. So I had to up my game. If I wanted to make a living and not end up going back to teaching, which I didn't particularly want to do, I had to do something quite fast. So luckily Portsmouth had an MA in translation that I could do part-time. So I taught half-time and did the MA. I could use the work that I'd done at IPS to do a corpus-based dissertation, which was very good, and it got me a nice, good mark to go on my CV. And I joined ITI as an associate member, because in Uruguay, there's 3 million people. I'd known a lot of people. I'd known the people who ran the translation course at the university. They knew me. Everything happened sort of organically. But over here, it was a much more competitive environment, and I didn't know how it worked, really. It was different. And I launched a freelance career. At the same time, I had a 2.5-day-a-week teaching job. That was very important to pay the mortgage. This is here, not for you to learn anything from it, but to show that I learnt from my MA all the amorphous stuff that had happened while I was working in the press agency. The MA taught me to sort of rationalise it, work out what was coming in, what was going out, and how it all hung together, where my position was in the structure of things. Okay, that was my favourite bit of my dissertation. I spent ages on that. So that's just there for that. The best things I did after the MA was to get informed and get connected, because I knew nobody. I was still getting work from clients in Latin America, but at Latin American rates, which wasn't very good. So I looked at a lot of websites. I went to lots of anything that the ITI could offer, because as a student member it was quite cheap to go to things. And also you knew that in the ITI you had people who were well qualified and who knew what they were talking about. I also went to the ATC conference, the first one after my degree, because I thought it would be a good idea to know what the other side of the story was, where they thought the work was, what they wanted from translators. That's the Association of Translation Companies. These are the websites I found most useful. Obviously, the ITI one, the IOL one. I did join some online translator forums like PROZ, or ProZ, I don't know how you say it, which they're very useful, but I couldn't work for the rates they were offering, quite honestly, or the times that they were offering, or the deadlines they were offering, or the fact that they wanted everything over weekends. Okay? And online journals and websites can be very useful as well. I believe all the PowerPoints are going to be on the ITI website afterwards, so you can get all the information from there, download them from there. Then, the ITI ran a course. They run now 2 different courses, isn't it? There's the orientation course, which is to guide you into a freelance career, which I believe is a scaled-down version of what I did, which was the peer support group at the time. What I did was this professional support group it is now. It's peer support group when I did it. It was over a period of 3 months, and it involved input of about 6 hours a week. And basically you had this network of very well-placed, very knowledgeable professional translators who sort of mentored you through all the getting yourself up and running. They helped you with your letterheads, invoices, all the things on this list here. You had advice from things like which translation memory package to buy, to which chair to get, what microphone's best, everything. And for a long period after the course finished, those people were quite happy if you emailed them with a question to reply to you. You know, very quickly, very helpfully. And you knew you were talking to people who knew what they were talking about. Most probably the most important part, was that you would write a business plan, which was revised by the mentors, and they suggested how to refine it, how to shape it, how to get everything where it should be, basically. This was my favourite bit from the ATC conference. I don't know how true it is, but this was presented there. As the areas where most translation work is, this is amongst the big translation, sort of corporate translation companies. Because I was worrying about my specialism. When I tried to get work for environment aid, etc., they all said, oh, we've got people here who do it for us. Or, oh, we subcontract it out to somewhere else in the world where it's much cheaper. So I thought, well, I've got to find a specialism. And this, I quite liked it. It showed that technology and medical obviously are the areas where there's a lot of work, and multilateral organisations are a bit more down there. So that was my next step. I thought, I've got to professionalise myself. I've got a mortgage to pay. I've got to do that. So I went for the MITI exam because I had the years of experience already accumulated and I passed. So I've got those letters after my name now. It means I'm also listed on the MITI directory, and I've had quite a lot of work come through that. Then I had to look for a better specialism that would earn me more, basically. And at an ITI conference, funnily enough, I met a lady who works in Barcelona who works on the bilingual production of medical journals. And through her, I managed to get my way onto a very low level of a team that does a dermatology magazine. It comes out in Spanish and we translate it into English. I tend to do the arts things and the letters, and all the very nice, proper stuff is done by people who are trained doctors, etc. But it's good. We have a translation memory that is shared, so I can check my terminology, I can check my phrasing. It's a very good thing, and I have a plan that I'm going to work on that. CPD is very important. I've been to a lot of business shows. I've joined the Mediterranean Editors and Translators Association, which is very closely linked to the work I do with the medical journals. They give you training in areas outside translation, more along the lines of reviewing, editing, etc. And you just keep building up your array of skills that you can offer, because, yes, there's one thing you want to do, but you're going to have to do everything to survive, really. This is my favourite slide. 5-year plans, they're great. You should always have an idea of where you want to be in 5 years and work towards it, because you've got to up your game constantly. Things are changing all the time, and you've constantly got to be ahead of the game. And they're not all bad. Some of those aren't particularly nice, but some of them are good. A final note, I went to a seminar on style run by Chris Durbin, and she was saying that there's not one translation, there are 9,000 different segments. Basically, you've got to decide where you want to work and work towards getting there. She wasn't a specialist in financial translation when she started, but she went to events where she learnt the jargon, she met the people, she worked her way in and worked her way up. And that's really what you have to do if you want to make a professional career of it. Pay can range from nothing, a lot of people do voluntary translations, up to £100 or more an hour. And to make a decent living, you have to decide how. You've got to adopt strategies that will get you there. I'm not there yet. The bad news, many of the translations you'd like to do are done for love, not money. Everybody wants to do poetry. Everybody wants to do lovely literature. I met a lot of people who do, I don't know, Japanese comic strips, but they do it for love, not money. But the good news is that no one has yet got one of these, and they've been working on it for 40 years. So it's a Star Trek universal translator. That's it.